Joined now by our Canucks reporter, Jeff Paterson of Rinkwide, who is there at the Save On Foods Center in Victoria. Jeff, how goes?
Yeah, it's going well. It's been a good couple of days here in Victoria. Hospitable folks. I think people are excited to have the Canucks back. They were here in 2019. The Canucks played a preseason game that year against the Calgary Flames. No preseason action in this building, but they will see a scrimmage on Saturday morning.
There was a lot of people in the seats in the footage that I saw there that you provided on the Rinkwide socials. Who's in those seats? Is that brass? Is that fans? Is that a swell of media?
Selling
who's
tickets,
there,
baby?
Yeah, I think primarily fans.
Yep.
The Canucks, obviously, they've got their management group here to evaluate, along with there were 8 coaches on the ice for the first day of sessions. It's unbelievable, the pupil to teacher ratio. But in terms of who's in the stands, yeah, just a very supportive crowd. And Jim Rutherford spoke about this on Wednesday when he was asked about why the Canucks are one of the few teams that continue to take their training camps, abroad, or at least far afield. And he said, we know the power of this brand in this province. Yeah, they're the Vancouver Canucks, but like the BC Lions, they see themselves as a provincial brand. And so a little bit of outreach, and people here in Victoria have responded through the first couple of days.
It was also nice just to see a real scrum. Like they were like like everybody was there, right? The two major networks were there. I heard Farhan's voice in the scrum. That was like an old school media scrum there around a lot of the players.
Yeah, not sure Elias Patterson thought it was so great.
No, you're right.
But to each their own, I suppose. But again, this is the start of training camp. This is the start of the hockey season. We know the Canucks matter, not just in Vancouver, but people in our business will travel, obviously, to cover them wherever they are, for the most part. Maybe not so much on the road this year with cutbacks. But yeah, the start of training camp. Lots of media here, lots of local Victoria media, TV and newspaper, print people as well. So that sort of added to the swollen number that made up the media guild here questioning these Vancouver Canucks.
Who has caught your eye so far, Jeff?
Well, I think the big storyline to open camp was Nils Hglander and Vasily Podkolzin. Where would they be placed? What kind of opportunities would they be granted? I don't want to say they're given opportunities, but these are guys that the Vancouver Canucks need. They need to step up, and they're under contract. They're both relatively high draft picks, and we know that last season was bordering on disaster for both of them. So to see them put in a position to succeed, Höglander on the top line with Paterson and Kuzmenko, I mean, what an opportunity for him. And Podkolzin with JT Miller, a guy that he's familiar with. He started his very first training camp out in Abbotsford a couple of years ago on the wing with Miller. He had Connor Garland on the wing then, but Brock Besser was on the other side yesterday. But I like that because we're talking at options. We're talking could have started either one of those guys with Jack Studnicka and Sheldon Dries and said, hey, these are NHL guys. If you want it, like earn it, work your way up. And instead, they decided to go the other route, which was put them in a position to succeed right off the hop and prove that you can handle it, can hold on to that spot. And we'll see as the weekend unfolds and into the preseason if they get chances to play preseason games along with those line mates. But for me, that was the big story. And then, of course, who was going to partner with Quinn Hughes. And on day one, at the very least, it was Noah Juulsen, which is interesting because, all summer we've been talking about who's going to be Quinn Hughes' partner and will it be one of the left-handed newcomers. And Rick Tocchet again yesterday, spoke at length about he's not unwilling to do it, but he sort of has to be talked into, using a pair of lefties together. He really wants the lefty-righty combination. And Noah Juulsen didn't look out of place with Hughes last year in the limited time that they had together, and then his season was ended due to injury. But for Noah Juulsen to get, firmly entrenched in that spot as training camp unfolded, maybe the left side is already in place, and maybe it's been there since July the 1st with Cole and Soucy and Quinn Hughes as your left side guys. And maybe the more intrigue then is what does the right side look as we work our way to opening night on October 11th?
Yeah, and does that mean Tyler Myers is top 4 again? Does that mean Juulsen finds his way to stick around with Hughes? Wow. You're right, though. He threw a lot of bones to young players. Juulsen, Höglander, even Archie Baines on a would-be third line. Jeff, when you shake it out, when you look at what they're going to look like on opening night, do you have Höglander and Podkolzin in the Canucks lineup?
Now that Tanner Pearson's been moved along, I mean, that's one less body, one more obstacle that they don't have to leap over. I certainly think that there is a path there for one of them, Matt. I don't know about both. Rick Tocchet is a guy that he knows the importance of a quick start. I thought it was fascinating to hear him talk about how he was candid when he said, like, I asked him, I said, how much do you know about Nils Höglander, the person and the player? Because remember, Höglander got sent down, didn't get called back up, where Podkolzin did finish the year in the National Hockey League, but Höglander spent the bulk of last year at the American Hockey League level after Tocchet took over, and Tocchet admitted, like, I really don't know. I mean, I went out to Abbotsford, I watched a little bit, but he said, I've leaned on people. I've talked to Travis Green about this player specifically. And of course, Höglander broke into the NHL under Travis Green a couple of seasons ago. And then he said he leans on Jeremy Colleton. And, it does sound like Tocchet and Colleton have formed a pretty good bond so far. Tocchet has said, you're not fringe in this organization. Like, you are part of the coaching staff. You just happen to work out in Abbotsford. And it does feel like, he trusts Colleton, he respects Colleton. And so I think Rick Tocchet is leaning on Jeremy Colleton a fair bit for advice on some of these players that he isn't all that familiar with, and Höglander's one of them.
Anything else stand out just from you saw those organized skates before training camp? Did these look any different than that? Did anybody seem faster? Did anybody seem bigger or anything like that as you watched the day unfold?
What struck me, and I mentioned the fact that there were 8 coaches on the ice, like Rick Tocchet does love to teach. And that's not to say that other coaches that have been here haven't. I remember we used to make a big deal of Travis Green and his one-on-ones with players out on the ice at game day skates. And, I'm sure Bruce Boudreau had his methods, maybe behind closed doors, but Rick Tocchet, and it goes back to that second game. Remember they got bleached in Seattle, and he talked about, maybe I need to, go back to boot camp with these guys. And the next practice, he was blowing the whistle and stopping things and walking guys. I mean, that's just who Rick Tocchet is as a coach. And so we saw a lot of that yesterday, that, he would do a drill, but if he didn't like what he saw, he wouldn't scream and yell and bark at guys, but he would blow the play dead, and he would get right in there. And there was like one-on-one instruction, go over to players and sort of, indicate with his stick and his gloves, what they were supposed to be doing, where he wanted them to go. A lot of work on the whiteboard between the drills here. I know that they've been doing a fair bit of video prior to each of these sessions so that players are familiar with the kind of drills that they're looking for them to go through, and that there aren't slip-ups and delays in that regard. But Rick Tocchet still, whether it's training camp, whether it's regular season practices, there really is a teacher in there, and he seems to embrace that part of the role. And so that was one of the things that stuck out to me, was just the sheer number of guys that were out there. And of course, it's Rick Tocchet, it's his NHL coaching staff with Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar and Mike Yeo. You had Daniel and Henrik Sedin, you had Jeremy Colleton and Ian Clark, the goaltending coach. So lots of guys in tracksuits to go along with all the players that were geared up in full equipment.
A lot of goaltenders.
Yes, yeah.
What did that look like? It was a coach per goaltender almost, based on your description there. What did that look like? Did that look like a mess, or did it seem organized, and anybody stand out?
Yeah, I mean, this really was like, I know that we build up training camp and we're looking for battles and those types of things, but it really just looked like a midseason practice yesterday. Again, a lot of drills, 5-on-5. There was no special teams work. That's going to come here later in the weekend. So it was really hard to evaluate. There was a little bit of heavy skating towards the end of the practice, but even at that, it was built into a breakaway chase kind of drill. It wasn't, lining up on the goal line and doing the bag skate the way that Travis.
No, you and Levy in the corner scenes.
No, none of that, and nobody looked like they were lagging far behind on day number one. Again, Rick Tocchet laid down the law, and it seems like guys took that to heart. We know about Kuzmenko and his offseason, and I think guys have reported here in shape, and there was every indication of that on the first day. To your question about goaltending, I mean, the thing that really jumps out is Casey DeSmith, who, what a whirlwind 48 hours for him to get word of the trade and then make his way across the continent, get to Vancouver, and then, now you got to go to Victoria for the first day of camp, but he's here, sounds happy to be here, talked about how excited he was to get a chance to work with Ian Clark. And the thing that jumped out is he's still wearing Pittsburgh Penguin colors. So, don't exactly match the blue and green of the Vancouver Canucks, but you got to go with what you go with. It's broken in, it's game ready. And until he gets Canuck colored gear, he's going to stick out like a bit of a sore thumb. He said a rainbow, in his words, with black and white and yellow equipment. But he's not alone. Ty Young plays for the Prince George Cougars. He's the youngest of the goaltenders that they've got here. And, of course, his gear is all black and red to fit with the theme of his Western Hockey League team. So, it's not uncommon to see that at a National Hockey League training camp. The guy that I continue to watch, I mean, I have no real issues or questions about Thatcher Demko, Artur Silovs, and Spencer Martin here, but Nikita Tolopilo really is an intriguing prospect to me.
Yeah.
And now with all of this clutter in the crease and you add Casey DeSmith, there's only one net to defend on any given night. So I'll be interested to see what they do. I know that management was asked the other day about the possibility of 3 goaltenders out in Abbotsford. Yeah, that's always a sticky situation. Again, not enough nets to go around, and you want guys to get reps in practice. And, of course, they all want to play the games as well. But Tolopilo was good. He won both of his games in Penticton. He's not a young star. He's 23, and he's got a couple of years of professional hockey experience, but 6'6", he fills the net. And so I'm just curious to see, as he advances, are some of his weaknesses exposed facing shooters at this level, or is he going to be up to the standards and the challenges? And I would say, through the first couple of days of training camp at the very least, like most of the goaltenders here, he's looked pretty good.
Jeff, the other goaltender, Demko, the do or die comment. Pretty interesting. I'm wondering your take on that. And did he just say it in more blatant terms than what Elias Patterson has been sort of maneuvering towards as he stick handles these questions about his contract?
I mean, it was a blunt comment, but he's not wrong either. I mean, it is go time. Paterson's going to be 25 here. Quinn Hughes is about to turn 24. JT Miller is now 30 years of age. This is this core group. Demko is part of it. He has to stay healthy, and if he can, we know that he is nibbling on the fringes of being in the Vezina conversation. He got Vezina votes, or at least a Vezina vote a couple of years ago, and then last year was a total write-off. But it is go time. He's got 3 years left on his contract. Beyond that, Quinn Hughes has 4. Like, they can't just keep spinning their wheels. And, of course, the big contract is Elias Patterson. And, again, I know a lot's been made about the big bad media and the question, like, how dare. That is the storyline and has been all summer long. It was our first chance to talk to Patterson on day number 1. Of course, that question was going to get asked. So, first rule of journalism, guys, this is ask the questions, right? We ask the questions. You don't know what kind of answer you're going to get unless you ask the question. Like Patterson could have said something like, hey, my agent and Patrick had a good discussion yesterday. Or he could have said, I am shutting this down right now. You just don't know without asking the question. But all of those answers would be stories in and of themselves. And so yesterday he tried to play the distraction, non-distraction thing. But again, this is like, he's a young guy. This is a massive life decision for him. And it's foolish to think that, in some of his quiet moments, he wouldn't be pondering his future and those types of things. And this question is it's not going to get asked every day. But this is a chance that we, as the local media, had to talk to the star of this hockey club that we all cover and follow. And so, of course, that question was going to get asked. But I just think with where those guys are in their age curve and contractually, like, damn well right, it is go time. So I'm glad to hear Thatcher Demko verbalize that, and we'll see if they can live up to that now once the season gets going.
Pocket said that he's a Scotty Bowman disciple when it comes to duos, and that he would do some experimentation. So I know Nils Höglander has a lot of fans, but day one, and we'll see where this goes. He had Paterson with Kuzmenko. I think we all agree that's likely a duo going forward after their success last year. So does it stand to reason, Jeff, JT Miller and Brock Besser are a duo, given the way he had them lined up yesterday with Podkolzin on the other flank?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on, until there's reason to go away from that. Now, Ilia Mikheyev is a complete wild card, and more so now that he's on personal leave. Like, he was already going to be a guy that I wanted to see him skate with the C group just to see where his mobility was, but then they grant him the personal leave. I don't know that he'll be here in Victoria at all. He may catch up with the group when they get back to the mainland, but he was already behind the 8 ball in terms of readiness for opening night, and what can he contribute after being off as long as he has been, and now not to get in even skates at training camp, I think just muddies the water a little bit. So, Arshdeep Bains, you mentioned him on a line with Pia Suter and Connor Garland. Is that just a nod to a nice Young Stars event in Penticton last week, and a guy that, by Tocchet's own words after the first day, another player that he doesn't know a lot about, but he said that from what he's heard, he's sort of coming around that Arshdeep Bains is, people in the organization are very high on him, and that he thinks that there's a player there for the Vancouver Canucks at some point. But is he just a placeholder? Where does Mikheyev fit in all of this? And then a guy like Anthony Beauvillier had to kind of look at where he was on the board yesterday, and he was a little lower in the lineup than I think perhaps he would have anticipated, and maybe some others, given that he spent so much time with Paterson and Kuzmenko after the trade last year. So you're right. I mean, it's impossible not to read into things. That's just what we do in this business when they line up after, an off season of talk. But yeah, I mean, I think it looks like Brock Besser and JT Miller are likely to get the opportunity to start together. And that's where I thought maybe a guy like Ilia Mikheyev, if he was in full and perfect health, could be a defensive conscience, add a little speed on that line, get in on the forecheck, try to turn some pucks over so that JT Miller can do, whatever he can with them, set up Besser. But I just, your guess is as good as mine now as when we're going to see Ilia Mikheyev involved in full group participation here with the Canucks.
And Jeff, if this lingers into the regular season, then I believe a top six winger role is going to be available for a Höglander or a Garland or a Podkolzin or someone like that. I mean, if Mikheyev is full go, I suspect your top six wingers are pretty much set with Mikheyev, Beauvillier, Besser.
But October 11th seems early to suspect that. Like, we went from a logjam to two guys out of the mix and I'm just saying out of the mix for October 11th. I think that's a pretty safe assumption at this point. Don't you, Jeff?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like, we wait all summer for training camp and kind of feels like for years we've said, the preseason's too long. It's just 6 games this year, so it's shorter than it has been. And again, Mikheyev's not playing Sunday night, so scratch one. Like, is he going to get any preseason action in? And at this stage, like, it's hard for me to imagine that he's going to be a participant in the preseason. Then there are a few more days. But yeah, I mean, October 11th is going to get here before we know it. And if he's not ready to go, then without a doubt, I mean, if you're Vasily Podkolzin or Nils Höglander, like, you have to be monitoring that situation and have it in the back of your mind. But yeah, I mean, Beauvillier as well. And maybe Tocchet has a sense of, what Beauvillier can do and some of the places that they could utilize him. But it kind of felt on the first day of training camp, at the very least, that like the welcome mat was being whirled out for Hglander and Podkolzin to really put their best foot forward here to try to stake a claim to one of those spots on the wing on the top couple of lines with this hockey club.
Lowercase welcome at
yes,
W and M. Yes. Can we just?
I appreciated the drop.
Yeah. Can we make the assumption the bottom 6 is going to be better, isn't it? Like, this should be a pretty decent bottom 6 here, both down the middle and on the wings, because guys like Hglander, Podkolzin, Beauvillier are all possibilities, certainly on the third line, and maybe it even leaks as far down as the fourth line.
Yeah, and I think they've upgraded down the middle as well with P.S. Suter, certainly,
sure.
And then Teddy Bluger. When they signed Bluger, I think we all questioned, can he be a 3C or is he better suited to be a fourth-line center? And for a couple of weeks, he was the third-line center, at least the de facto third-line center, but then they went and were able to get Suter under contract, and so P.S. Suter, there's been some consistency in his game. It's only been 3 years in the National Hockey League, but either 14 or 15 goals, with 2 different organizations, and the Blackhawks and the Red Wings, neither one of them has been particularly good in his time in the league. So, when you think how much of an opportunity Nils Zaman had there last year, Sheldon Dries was used a fair bit. And look, Sheldon Dries, I think, has a role as a depth guy here and can provide offense. But, the underlying numbers weren't particularly good for him defensively. And so Bluger brings a defensive conscience. I think P.S. Suter is probably the best third-line center that they've had here in a while. And so, not only the options on the wing, and we haven't talked about a guy like Dakota Joshua. We know how much Rick Tocchet liked his game and thinks that there's more there, that they can peel away some of the layers of the onion and continue to build him up. Phil DiGiuseppe is here and just doing his thing yet again, another big body that Rick Tocchet seems to like. And so, they've got options, and options are a good thing. But I also think that with the additions down the middle, that they are a better hockey team on paper. And, of course, the game is played on ice, and guys are going to have to go out there and prove it. But I do think that subtle upgrades, they didn't have a lot of money to spend in the offseason, but I do think they spent it wisely. And we're going to start to find out if, in fact, that is the case here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, maybe the best third-line center since Brandon Sutter had that good, healthy season back in 2016, 2017. Poor Brandon wasn't very healthy
back on the ice
after that. Jeff, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this. Enjoy all the action there in Victoria. And we got a rink wide coming up on Sunday.
Yes,
a post game. How about this?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Myself and Blake will be delivering the goods and getting back into the swing of post game. It's like the old times, doing post game.
Just
like
so. We'll catch back up on Sekeres and Price Monday. Thanks, Jeff.
Sounds good.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Play Dead IPA.